Hey, good morning, guys. Real estate broker Michael Watkins again. And today, what I want to talk to you about is what happens after you sign a contract and the inspection period. All right, this is a commonly asked question by a lot of buyers. It's one of the most salient parts of entering into a deal and making an offer on a house, the inspection period. I can see the inspector is actually here. It looks like he's inspecting the roof. What's up, Mike? Yeah, so we're gonna get into it. I'll give you guys a little bit more information.
Okay, boy, I'm beating my best, I know. Feeling the buzz, living my life, dancing, let's make some noise.
So this is a Florida, what's called an as-is residential contract for sale and purchase. This is the typical contract that's used in the purchase and sale of real property here in Florida. I'm not going to go through every single part of this. I'm going to move forward and just talk about the inspection period because that's what this video is about. I'm going to drill down on specifics of section 12 right here, property inspection and right to cancel. All right, because if I went over this entire contract, it would probably be a 2-hour video, and I will eventually do a video on every aspect of a residential contract, but right now we're talking about property inspections. All right, so this is a really important part of any contract. It's probably one of the most important parts of a contract. So right after you enter into a contract, as a buyer, you have the right to inspect the property. If you're a seller, you also need to grant a time period for a buyer to inspect the property. And you can see it says here, property inspections and right to cancel. Buyer shall have blank days after effective date. And just a quick note, this should never be left blank. All right, I know it says here, if left blank, then 15 days. However, I personally never leave this blank because I want to get my buyers an adequate amount of time to make sure they can properly inspect the property. Sellers usually want this period to be as short as possible. If I'm representing a seller, I also want to advocate it being as short as possible, sometimes even 7 days. You want to be fair to a buyer, you know, from a seller's perspective, but at the same time, you don't want an inspection period dragging out for an extended or protracted period of time. So you want to get the inspection done. So if you're a seller, you can move on. If this buyer decides they don't want to purchase the property because of something they found in inspection, that they can move on and put the property back on the market, right? And sell it. And if you're a buyer, you want to make sure that you are getting the property that it's promised, right? You don't want any surprises. And let me just point out a really important sentence in this section, right? So you can see here it says, if buyer determines, and this is the part that's important here, in buyer's sole discretion, right here, right? Meaning it's not contingent on anything that's in the inspection report. It could be. So for example, you could find, like I'm going to explain in the next segment of this video, maybe plumbing that is completely unacceptable for a myriad of reasons, right? And that could be the reason you don't want the property. But in your sole discretion, you could say, I just don't like the color of the paint in the bedrooms. And that is reason enough for you to get out of a contract. I emphasize that because I have a lot of clients who ask me, you know, they get really nervous and they say, well, you know, what if I don't like something? Can you know, what, will I lose my deposit? No, you cannot lose your deposit if you decide for whatever reason that you want to back out of the contract, as long as it's within the inspection period, right? And it stipulates that here, right? The deposit paid shall be returned to the buyer. Thereupon, buyer and seller shall be released from all further obligations under this contract. And then it goes on to say here, unless you do not exercise your right to terminate the contract, you are then responsible. So for example, let's say it was a 15-day inspection and you didn't terminate the contract or didn't give written notice that, hey, I don't want to buy this house, you then accept the physical condition of the property. Now we're moving forward, right? You can't all of a sudden say, hey, I don't like the property after your inspection period has passed. And I'm actually going to put a link to a case study of a client I had a couple years back where I actually helped her to get some of her money back because she was in breach of contract. For whatever reason, she had an agent that didn't, pay close attention, or she wasn't paying attention and was kind of nonchalant about the inspection period, and the seller held her feet to the fire, so to speak. The seller said, no, you're out of your inspection period. If you don't buy my house, you're in breach of contract, and I'm going to keep your deposit. And furthermore, I can even sue you for performance, right? And now we're getting into different territory here. But yes, that is a thing. A seller can sue a buyer for what's called performance, meaning, hey, you have no good reason to not buy my property as stipulated in the contract, so I'm going to take you to court to force you to buy my property. All right, but like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. But the bottom line is, within the inspection period, you just want to make sure you do your due diligence, check the property out, make sure it's up to your standards. The inspector that I'm working with on this current deal is going to go a little bit more into detail about that. All right, so Mike,
Yes.
we recently had a deal that kind of fell apart partially because of mold, right?
Yep.
Which is, if I'm not mistaken, obviously you're the expert, is an issue in Florida, right? I mean, Florida's a pretty humid state. What do you have to say about?
We see mold issues here more than most other states because of the humidity, for sure, but also because we get a lot of storm events, and that can create situations in houses where you get moisture intrusion. You
Right.
know, whether you can see it immediately or not, a lot of times moisture will get in through the roof or other damage in the structure, and then you don't know it till you got mold. So you're
Right.
100% right. It's a big issue down here.
Right, and more specifically about the last deal, we were just touching on that
Yeah.
last deal that we did. That was an interesting deal, to put
was
it mildly.
interesting. Most of the house you go through, it
Right.
looks fine. This is the thing about mold. 90% of what you see
Right.
is invisible. So let me say it like this. If you see mold on the wall, you see about 10% of what's actually there. It's
Right.
like an iceberg theory.
Right.
So when we were in that house, we noticed some mold on the master bathroom vent. We took one air sample in the hallway, nothing showed up in the air sample. And then because I saw mold up in the vent on the master
Right.
bathroom
Right.
vent, I said, this is where the second sample needs to be taken, and mold levels were off the charts.
And Mike, I know you're in the middle of an inspection on one of my other
haven't
deals
started
right
yet.
now, so I'm not going to hold you up.
okay.
But let me ask you really
Yeah.
quickly, what are if you had to name one or two things
Mm-hmm.
that people need to pay attention to with regard to the inspection, what would you say those are?
Let me put it this way: in the when it comes to what most people think about important points of the home, they think of the 4 points, the 4 major points of the home: the
Right.
electric, the HVAC, the plumbing, and the roof.
Right.
To some degree, we report on that information in what's called the 4-point inspection that goes to the insurance company. But a home inspection, the scope of work for that is vastly greater. The thing about home inspections is, to a lot of different people, it has a different definition.
Right.
Most people think home inspection, it covers everything under the sun. The way Florida defines it, it's a visual examination of the property, inside and out. So basically, if we can't see it with the naked eye, we're not required to report on it. You want to supplement that a little bit with some
Right.
high-tech imagery.
Right, right. And that's why you've done most of my last few inspections, man.
We've been working for together for a while.
Let's get this one done and keep it going, Mike. Thanks,
All right.
man.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Michael. Appreciate it.
I want to talk to you about one of the other reasons why this last deal that I did ran into some problems. All right, polybutylene plumbing. All right, that's a big deal here in Florida. All right, you don't run across it as often anymore because a lot of insurance companies simply aren't tolerating it. Right, they want you to basically remove the poly-B plumbing before they'll even insure you. Let's go out here to the backyard. So the last deal we did, we ran into a problem with poly-B, they call it, plumbing, because of the fact that, but let me give you some history on poly-B plumbing. Hey, what's up, man? How are you? So about maybe 25, 30 years ago or so, poly-B was supposed to be the new best thing in plumbing, right? It was less expensive, it was supposed to last, but then what ended up happening is that it started to leak, right? I think with certain chemicals that go through the water supply, it causes poly B to start to crack. Oh wow, is that rain? Let me go back inside. It causes poly B to start to crack, and obviously if you have plumbing in your house that starts to crack, it's going to cause leaks, right? So that's what happened with the poly B. So a lot of insurance companies started to basically not want it. Now, if you come across a house that you're having that has poly B plumbing, you're going to have problems, right? You're going to have problems in a couple of different ways. Number one, you might have an insurance company that doesn't want to insure you because of the poly B plumbing. And number two, if for whatever reason you stay in the house or you decide to purchase the house with the poly B plumbing, you might end up having leaks. You might end up having a situation where you have a crack in the poly B plumbing and it causes water damage.
So this is Centricon baiting system.
All right.
So basically, it looks like they had it at one time. If you're gonna have this around the house,
right,
it's usually all the way around the whole perimeter of the house. Basically, what's in there is like wood, right? So, but the wood has the cellulose has a growth regulator also. So the subterranean termites will come and find this, they'll feed on it, and then they won't be able to reproduce and the colonies die off.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, so
nice. So the previous owner
they
had the
had-
foresight to put that in,
yeah.
But there are no rodents or termites.
This house is
yeah,
clear. I didn't
nice.
see any signs of anything. Not even.
So that concludes today's class for inspections and what to expect once you sign a contract to enter into purchasing a house. All right. Thanks for watching. Don't hesitate to give me a call if you have any questions. Have a good day.